Hey everybody, this is Deji.
And Chris.
Welcome to the Lot1 Podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Courtney Young about being a dialect coach, all things accents, Greta Gerwig, Marvel, and much more. So let's get into the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we have Courtney Young, who is a dialect coach and has been on a lot of movies you might have heard about, maybe one or two at least. So for those people who don't know you at home, who will undoubtedly know the movies you've been in, a part of, who are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Do you mind giving us a little bit of a backstory on who you are?
So my name is Courtney Young, and I am a dialect and language coach. I say language coach because I feel like that's a lot of what I'm doing lately for film and theater, but primarily for film. And yeah, I do work for Marvel quite a bit lately. And yeah, I just help actors if they have to speak in a different accent for a role, or speak a different language for a scene, or even change their voice if they're younger and they have to play older, or if they have to have a speech impediment, whatever requires some sort of vocal shift for the character, that's what I'm charged with coaching. So, yeah.
How did you get started?
Oh, I was a theater major in college. I was a theater major at University of Utah, and I was actually a musical theater actor, but I knew I didn't want to go into acting professionally. I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't a dream of mine. And so I had a professor that I had taken an accent class of hers just for fun. And she was like, "You have an ear for this. You seem to be very enthusiastic about it." And I was helping other students in the class who maybe were struggling. Like if my professor, I wasn't taking over her class, but when she would be helping students, I would jump in and explain things if people were struggling. And so I was about to graduate, and she recommended this graduate program in London, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And they are sort of the program that were like the birthplace of voice work. So a few people you might have known went there, like Judi Dench, Laurence Olivier, Andrew Garfield, Kit Harington, Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she suggested this voice program and said, "Look, if you're wanting to stay in the arts but not go into acting, I think that you have a real gift for this." So I'd already been to London twice before on 2 study abroads, and I loved it. So twist my arm, I applied and got in a month before the program started.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's kind of how it all got started. Yeah.
And so do you feel like as a kid, were you sort of drawn to like different accents or what do you?
It was more musical theater. I would always be singing. And so it was just, I was more of just a dramatic theater kid, singing around the house. My family all sing. So accents were never a big thing. And also I was from Texas. And so when I was, or I am from Texas. When I was younger, I just had this thick Texas accent, and I never really spoken anything else. It would just be like, "Hey, I'm Courtney and I'm from Dallas. How are you?" Like little Texas Courtney.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I got involved with theater in college that my accent started to normally neutralize. I wasn't like I was making an effort for it to change. But when you're doing Shakespeare and you're taking these voice classes and things, it starts to sort of calm down. And I was also doing my training in Utah, which has a very neutral sound. So it's just something that I had never really thought about, but out of that one accent course and the encouragement of a professor, it just sort of, took off.
It's funny you that's where you got your origin, because I started in theater. I studied acting for 14 years, stage acting and stuff. So like everything you're describing, I was like, okay, this actually makes so much sense, because my older sister is also in theater. And now produces, and she was the same way, and I was the same way. And like, it's just like theater kid energy to just kind of jump into accents all the time and random things all the time. So totally made sense that that's where you got your start from, which I think is hilarious.
Thank you. And I always played tramps and crazy women. Like I'd be in Sweeney or
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd or Into the Woods or Issues, but she was more fun than the ingenue. So
yeah,
whatever.
So I guess how did you out of school, you went to school in London. When did you sort of land that first project?
Oh gosh. So my trajectory went quite quickly, which I don't take for granted and I fully appreciate. So I had moved back to the US and it was in the middle of a recession. So anyone in the arts knows if a recession hits, the arts are the first to go, right?
Yeah.
Or how the first to really struggle. And so I had moved back. I'd been teaching in London at little drama schools, theater, hadn't been doing any film work. And I had to move back here because my visa was expiring, what have you. And so I was just teaching at a local university, teaching theater because I wanted to stay in the arts. And a girl that I'd gone to drama school with in London, she was formerly a location scout and then came and did the same master's program as I did. And so she knew how I worked. We had the same training. She knew I wouldn't get starry-eyed around big actors. And so she had, let me say that I'd worked on a few indie films here, but it was for free. And struggling, just trying to get a credit, trying to stay working and what have you. But she calls me up and says, hey, I worked on principal photography for this film, but I can't come do reshoots in LA and they're 5 weeks. And can you do them? And I said, sure. And I didn't even ask what the film is. And she says, it's Captain America Civil War. And I had done maybe 3 indie films, 2 for free, 1 not for free, but nothing of that scale. And so, of course, me just being me, I said, sure, no problem. And so right out of the gate, she's like, okay, you're going to be coaching Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Elizabeth Olsen, and Daniel Bruhl. And I was like, great, no problem. Panic. So I went to LA and it was 4 weeks of reshoots and, you're dealing with Sokovian, fake, created accent, 2 characters speaking that. You've got Chadwick speaking Wakandan, which is based off a real African accent, but something and it's a click language, so I'd never done that before. And then Tom, is English, but had to sound American. And so it was really just diving into the deep end. And luckily, when I'm faced with something that I'm very afraid of or nervous, I just act like, no problem, I got this. Fake it till you make it, but also don't keep faking it. Just, I knew my stuff and I trusted myself. So that was my first big job working in the States. And luckily, all of the actors liked me. And I just don't mean it's not a, try to cozy up to them. I'm very direct. I'm not going to kiss because people are going to hear how they're speaking and there'll be millions of people in this case. So, I just got on really well with everyone and was very clear in my communication, and Marvel obviously took a liking to me. And then several of the actors would request me again.
Wow,
and so cool. It just sort of took off after that. But yeah, that was my first. Most people I don't think go from 3 indie films to holy crap.
Yeah, no.
Especially back then, the top of the top films, like those were the films at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
so yeah.
That definitely is a little, that you definitely went into the deep end for sure. Like right away. Yeah. So I kind of want to get into the weeds a little bit. So what does a dialect coach do on set?
So on set, I mean, aside from the prep, we usually meet with our actors. I mean, however much time production will give us. Some productions give us no time to prep with the actors. Some will say, you're meeting with them tomorrow, go. And you're like,
wow.
Great. So part of it is usually I show up in the morning when my actor shows up in makeup. because sometimes between makeup and then they're changing into costume and going to set, there's no time. That's not always a given. You have to respect the space of the makeup artists and the hair artists and their trailer. But I'll get there when the actors are showing up. So if Cumberbatch is showing up at 4 a.m., I'm there at 4 a.m. on the off chance that I'm needed or pulled into the trailer. And so if there's no opportunity to really work with them that early in the morning, I usually will ride with them to set and we'll run their lines. If it's something super complicated where they're speaking a bunch of different languages, an example would be Sebastian Stan in Falcon Winter Soldier. Bless him, I adore him. He was speaking Japanese, Sokovian, Wakandan, some Russian. It was just from day to day. That show, they were like, let's just throw it at the wall. Oh, Courtney can do it? Great, done.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're riding to set with them and going over it, or you're running their lines with them on set while they're getting their makeup touched up. So typically I'm sitting on set. I tend to sit by the sound mixer. Some dialect coaches sit at Video Village. I tend to not do that.
Is that like, is there a reason for that?
So it's just a thing of also, if I have any sound issues or like my contexts are going out, then I want to be near the sound people to rectify that as soon as possible.
Right.
So I'm usually just sitting there, I'm listening to the actor, and if I have to step in, I don't step in a lot because that takes away from performance and can distract the actor and really throw them off. Or some people might get too into their head about, oh, this R in the word fortune was incorrect. So I'll usually step in. The director steps in first. You never step in before the director. They'll give their note. I'll go in, give a few quick notes, get out. But I usually try to do no more than 3 notes, because anything more than that, it just gets a little, you're just giving them too much information. They've got so much other things to worry about.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the prep is for. So I just combed through all of Thunderbolts and gave notes for post-production work, anything that needed to be redubbed or I couldn't understand or what have you. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's cool. You've been doing this for a while, and do you have like a just a big slew of accents that you just have in the back of your head, or do you, or I mean, like there's some languages that are, or like accents that are sort of made up a little bit sometimes too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do you sort of like pull back into this like big, like I want to say swath, I don't know if that's the right word, but
catalog,
library. There you go. Library for most of the shoots, or are there ever situations where you're like, oh, that one I don't know, I need to like go research that? Or
I mean, I get those sort of situations all the time. Most of the time you're getting requests for a lot of similar accents, but I've had requests for, oh, we need Mongolian in 3 days. And I'm like, excuse me? Okay. And I usually will tell production, that's a bit tough. You're going to have to give me a little more time, because the main thing is when you're working with accents, the most important thing to me is to get native samples, right?
Yeah.
So if you're asking for a specific accent from a little specific town in Louisiana, then I'm going to want to get accent recordings from someone that's actually from that space, because to me, vocal representation is super important.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've watched a show and I'll be like, is that a Texas accent? Okay. And you get really judgy. And also, if you're from that place, it feels like, voice is personal. If someone says, what's wrong with your voice? It's like saying, what's wrong with your face?
Yeah.
So I immediately try to get native samples as soon as possible. And then I usually send them sentences they have to read that make them say every sound, vowel, consonant. And then I have them answer some questions, because sometimes when you're reading sentences, it can be quite robotic. So you also want conversational.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do first off. But to go back to your question, I tend to get a lot of Brits speaking American, American speaking received pronunciation or BBC English, I've had a lot of Germans and Russians lately that I need to coach someone to sound that. But I recently this week, and I can't tell you the accent, but I just had a production within 3 days. They said, oh, we need this accent, and it's from an island where the population is less than, it's like a couple of thousand people. And I'm going, do you know how rare this accent is? I don't say this to them. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. I calmly say, what's my time frame? And they usually give me a time frame that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it's usually, there's a network of voice coaches. Now, every dialect coach has an archive of audio files. Or if I went on to vacation in Italy 2.5 years ago, and I made contacts with the driver, the lady who was running the place we stayed, anyone that just had a really thick, authentic accent, sounds like they've never left the village, kind of a thing. And so, and then, you know, if you don't have it in your archive, you reach out to other dialect coaches and you either barter or you pay them. You'll be like, I'll trade you my Greek accents for.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you have to do. You just quickly have to find someone. And then the hardest part, I will say, is because everyone has their own lives, they're busy. And this is a lot of times what producers don't understand is, sure, I found someone to record this Mongolian accent, but they're busy, they're at work, they'll get to it. They'll get to it this weekend. By Monday, I still don't have it. So it's just it's like hurry up and wait. Like in the film industry, it's also that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I was gonna ask the question, but then you answered it about having like your own archives of like voices, which I think is interesting. And I also I was really interesting that you said that you make contacts and then you reach out to them, and then that it's like so interesting to think about that. Like, because I would have never thought of doing that, which
like,
I mean,
trading cards, but
that too is kind of cool.
It's funny you bring that up. I was stalking your TikTok, and you had posted a video responding to, I forget what show it was, but they said water. Water. Yeah, but I saw like someone like on YouTube had been like, wow, I really appreciate them choosing, or like where this person is from, it's very specific to that town versus the country, and they said it perfectly. And then you were like, yeah, it's because I did my research. Like, it's like which was it was so cool though, because I mean, I grew up in a small little valley town, and like, you know, there's valley speak, but I would have I would have never thought about
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good.
I have dogs and cats, and I'm like, what the hell?
That was hilarious.
That was a funny image too. I just saw like the eyes widening, and then I hear that's great.
It's always when you're like on Zoom, and like the other day, I'm name dropping because I love her and she's so nice. But Catherine Hahn, I was Zooming with Catherine Hahn the other day, prepping her and something. And I've had like 2 cats walk across the laptop, and then the dog, and she has tons of animals. So she's like, whatever, but this is my life. So I'm so sorry.
Hey man, it's part of who you are, right?
Back to you.
I never thought about the like even certain like cities or certain just very small parts will say things differently, and how people from those locations will appreciate you doing that homework and being able to also prop up the actor. Because something that also I noticed in that video is the YouTuber who, I think it was a YouTuber who was talking about it, was like, good on the actor, which it is good on the actor, but ultimately it's good on you, because if you would have never coached on that, then the actor would have probably never have known to do that in that way. So I feel like it definitely like unsung hero in that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Thank you. And also that specific video was referring to Agatha all along, where, you know, we were doing like we were basically taking the piss out of Mayor of Easttown, you know, but Agatha is set in southern New Jersey, but southern New Jersey is so close to Philadelphia. So a lot of the accents, you know, are a little interchangeable sometimes. So yeah, I put them through the ringer on that one. And It turned out so much fun and great. And yeah.
So what's your process when you're sitting down with an actor for the first time? Is there anything that you kind of like always start with?
Well, one thing I always do is I create a packet for each actor I work with. This is regardless of how they prefer to work. And what I mean by that is, when I was in college, I've always loved education, but I struggled as a student. I struggled. I was a very visual learner. So the minute someone started talking at me, it was like, panic, zoning out, not. And so I try to create packets that have one, I'll create exercises that reinforce the target accent they're speaking in, and I'll do a sound breakdown of specific sounds that go with that accent, and we'll have practice sentences that make them reinforce the sounds, and I'll have pictures of the exercises and pictures of your mouth position and audio samples. Like most of my actors are getting like a 40-page PDF. I'm maybe it's the professor in me that I'm like, no excuses. Here's your
Taking them to school.
giant PDF. But most actors love that because it's like homework, and they can pick and choose and take what they want from it and what works for them. And I also tend to have a dialogue with my actors and just bluntly say, because I have one actor who she wants to do a 20-minute full vocal exercise warm-up before she goes to set. Now, she was a producer on the film I was coaching her on, so she had that power. Most actors, you can't get that time.
Yeah.
But then I've had one other actor who he didn't want to run his lines at all, and he struggles a bit. So I don't really take no for an answer, but in a sweet way. So I would just compile loads of poetry that are in that target accent by poets from that country. And I'm like, just read the depressing poetry right before you go on set, just to kind of get him in the voice. And so you're just doing whatever you can to help them succeed, help them get into the sound. The biggest issue I see is the lack of consistency. Like what I mean by that is if I said to you, speak in a native London accent for 30 minutes and I want it to be authentic. Like I can't tell you're not from London. The biggest problem is people maintaining the musculature, the anatomy, sound slip out. And so that's why the exercises and we talk about anatomy. I mean, every semester of my studies in England, we studied anatomy because I've also had actors that can't hear the sound. So they might be tone deaf. So then I have to describe anatomically, okay, your tongue's laying in the bottom of your mouth, your roof of your mouth is raised. So sometimes you have to get that detailed. It's just, you have to be adaptable because if production doesn't give you prep time, and you're with them 2 days before you start filming, and maybe they're really bad at accents.
Yeah.
You have to be able to think on your feet, but also not make them feel like they're terrible or you're criticizing them. You just have to quickly get them to trust you and get working.
So I actually do want to talk about a few of you just mentioned one of them, but like what are some of the techniques to, I guess, get the actor to ramp up quickly, especially in those like tight timeline moments?
Well, I usually give them exercises that quickly say I've only got time with them in the car before as we're going to set. So I'll do an exercise where it's like smell the flower, blow out the candle. So you're breathing into the nose and blowing out with the mouth. And what that does is that's getting your breath centered in your diaphragm, because some accents, most Americans tend to breathe from here. We're quite shallow breathers.
Yeah.
And so we're not fully utilizing our diaphragm. So that's one quick one. If I have an actor who has to speak in an accent that's quite dropped, because as Americans, our accents are quite nasal and higher. So if they have to speak quite dropped in an accent, I'll have them do buzzy exercises on their lips, like where they're vibrating on their lips. It's not humming, it's vibrating at the front. So that quickly like engages the diaphragm, drops the accent where it needs to be. If I'm working with an actor who has to speak Russian, a lot of times I'll have them do, I say we because I've worked with other colleagues and we all share exercises because we all trained
nice.
at the same place.
That's cool.
But usually for Russian, it'll be glug, 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 glug. So it's like GLA. And it makes the tongue heavier.
Yeah.
Good for Russian. Russian tends to sit in the back of the mouth, but not high up, like nasal wise. So you're just giving them quick exercises that are helping sort of snap them into the posture in the space they need to be in. And I'll make them be a bit silly too. Like if I'm having them do the glug glug, I'll be like glug 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 glug, like depressing sounding. Or it just depends on the character and the playfulness of the actor. Yeah. So you use whatever just comes to mind. I've thought of
That's
stuff
really cool.
off the top of my head. And sometimes I'm like, that didn't work. And other times I'm like, I'm brilliant. So it just depends.
That's awesome.
Just musical theater vocal exercises. That's all you're doing. That's what it sounds like. That's just like, that's what's evoking to me. Yeah. I just like,
I know.
All those times in theater and like choir and stuff, those are like so many exercises like that before ever singing.
Although you have to be careful because sometimes you might have an actor who you can tell comes from musical theater. And so a lot of the times they'll do the turn.
Yeah.
Hi. And you're like, okay, don't do the musical theater turn, or maybe they're too sing-songy.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you have to quickly, if you don't have time, you have to quickly figure out how to assess who you're working with, what they need, and then how to get to that as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm curious. You said that, when you had when you were on set and the director would come in and you'd come in afterwards. It just kind of got me thinking, like, which department heads do you work with a lot? Like, who are the main people that you work with on any shoot?
I'm mostly like the AD department, but I'm a department of one. So I'm my own department, which is lovely. But also, it can be a little lonely, but you make friends, what have you. But I'm a department of one, but I mostly work with the sound mixer, the sound department, because I rely on them to do my job. And then usually the second AD is my main lifeline because I need to know, okay, has the actor, has their deal gone through yet? Can we start working? What's their availability? It's just as soon as possible. I need the actor's contact info or their people, whatever they prefer, and get me connected to them. So it's usually AD department, second AD especially, and the sound department. And then for post-production, it's the editor or the post-production supervisor. Same thing, yeah. And then also either the actor directly or some prefer people to go through their assistant or their manager, what have you. So it just depends on the actor. But you learn, usually the second AD can give you the intel before you approach the actor. So.
The Lot1 Podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high-quality coffee beans. Their artisan-roasted, single-origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot1 Podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code LOT1BOGO at checkout to receive one free bag of coffee when you buy two. That's right, Deji, buy two, get one free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code Lot1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code Lot1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy two, get one free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure.
When you get brought on, are you talking to like the director about what they're looking for, or the producers, or to sort of pinpoint like the accent that you're trying to have that character?
I mean, it just depends. So, for example, Ang Lee, I worked with Ang Lee on Gemini Man, and I've never had so many meetings with a director in my life. And also, it's Ang Lee. So the whole time I'm going, like, what is my life? Thank you, God. It's wonderful. Because Ang Lee cares about every aspect of the film, and you just feel so empowered. And also, he cares and pays attention to everything. And then I have some films where the director doesn't even know who I am or can't remember my name. I'm just not even in their hemisphere. And so it really is just depends on the production.
Yeah.
I will say Greta Gerwig, love. She is such a collaborator on every single level.
That's cool.
And so she wanted to know everything about every department, and she wasn't intrusive. She was just like, ooh, tell me this. I love this.
That's really cool.
And yeah, so it's sort of how we are in everyday life. You're going to run into people who have their quirks or the things that they want to do things the way they want to do. So yeah, it just depends.
Yeah. So kind of going back to working with the actors, do you find that there is, I guess, what do actors find the most difficult when they're learning accents? Is there like any sort of commonalities between like a lot of actors?
It really just, really just depends on the actor. Like, can they hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Are they naturally good at accents? Do they want to work on it? It's just a bunch of different variables. And also it's the difficulty of the accent. I've had some shows where you've got an actor speaking in an accent and then production writes a last minute scene and they've got the actor speaking French all of a sudden and you're going, what? And the actor's going, what? And French is quite difficult, especially if you're an American.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you have to be able to think on your feet. And, you know, I've had sometimes where the actors are like, no, I'm not going to do that, because sometimes it might be a little unreasonable, like a last minute request. And also why is the character speaking this all of a sudden? So do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just depends.
Got it.
And my biggest trial is I have to keep my face neutral.
as you're getting all the requests,
because like if you're sitting in the room and the actor and the producer people are discussing and I'm just going,
it's like the emoji where you're smiling but melting at the same time.
Yeah.
No, that would be me every time. So I'm usually just looking at the lines and the sides for the day, because it's like when I was younger in church, if something was embarrassing being said at the pulpit, I would look at the hymn book. So it's just me repeating the same actions.
So you're just like going back and forth, same two pages.
When you get a script or side for the day, like example, you say like, oh, they have to learn French. Like suddenly they're speaking French in this scene and we didn't know. Like, so are you getting the like script with the French, written in the script, and then you go in and you decide, well, if they're from this region, we have to change this line or like blah, blah, blah. Or is it like, nope, I'm just focusing on the dialect and the accent? Like what's your influence on the actual use of the verbiage in the language?
I mean, it's pretty heavy. An example would be, I was on a show and in reshoots, they decided to add Arabic. And they were like, and production's like, we know a guy who speaks Arabic. And I said, okay, but the scene takes place in this, there's, 8 different dialects of Arabic. And the scene doesn't take place with the Arabic, that like that PA can speak. So that's not correct. So either we change the location of the scene or you let me go do my job. But I mean, sometimes I've had actors who English is not their first language and production will change the lines last minute. And so the actor's freaking out because if your first language isn't English, you're already translating into a second language. And then, so I just have to, one, not panic. Two, if the actor is panicking, help them not panic. And then sometimes I've had to go to production and just sort of ease them through it. The example with an actor who maybe English isn't their first language, I just say, if you're going to make changes, could we get them the night before? Because now we're late to set because they, it's just, it just depends. And then a lot of the time I'll concern myself with everything related to anything vocals. A lot of times in these films, you'll get a bit character who comes in and they're literally a day player, there for one day. And they'll say they want them to speak High German, but then maybe how some of the lines are written is not High German. It's more modern. And so I just have to delicately, a lot of my job is discernment and diplomacy. So
cool.
I have to go in and not insult the writer. And it's not never my intention, and not insult production and not, still do my job, because you never want to say to them, oh, we can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you also want to, cover your actor and do them justice as well. So it can be a lot of moving parts. You just have to,
There's a few fun questions I wanted to ask. Well, first, is there an accent that that like American or English speakers have a really hard time with?
Boston would be the first one that comes to mind.
Really?
Yeah, that's a really difficult one because Boston sits in a specific nasal, it has a specific nasal resonance, and then it has similarities to other states around it. A lot of people, if they try to do Boston, they go New York or New Jersey. And then if you're a Southerner trying to do Boston, we go to twangy. So that's one that historically a lot of actors will go, oh, Boston. And start to stress about. I'd probably say, I mean, as a person from the South, I don't think a lot of actors would think Southern is hard, but because I can tell the difference between Kentucky and Tennessee and what have you. I think Southern is difficult because, or maybe people just do blanket Southern. I don't know. So, parts of like the TV show Fargo, like that, those accents can be quite difficult. But once you sort of get into the rhythm of them and you've got the sounds and they require more work, they can start to come naturally. But yeah, it's just, there's so many variables. So
yeah, I have also so there's is it the schwa secret? Is that a thing?
The schwa secret? Tell me. I don't know the secret.
I heard that like if the way that SCHWA, the way that you say it in different dialects or something, it helps. I don't know. It sounds like you didn't know what that was, so maybe it's nothing.
I wasn't let in on the secret.
Okay, yeah. So no, none of us know. It's going to remain a secret. I can tell
you that when I studied in London, and I'd never thought or knew what a schwa was in my entire life. And then I get to England and everything is schwas. So schwas, they have so many schwas, especially if they speak received pronunciation, which is BBC English, very proper English. So like about, if you pronounce, a lot of Americans will say caramel, but if you say caramel, that slight sound. So it's not like caramel. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know about any secrets, but yes, depending on the accent, they may have a lot of schwas or none.
What is a schwa? What is that?
It's kind of, so what I just said, it's that sound that is unstressed. So if I'm saying the word customer, the sound is very pronounced, right?
Okay.
Customer. There's no doubt I'm hitting that vowel sound quite hard. But if I say about, I'm not going about.
Oh, I see. Got it.
It's just one of those sounds. Like I'll say the word again, caramel, caramel, caramel. It's an unstressed, and it tends to be that sound.
Yeah.
So it's just a feature that comes up. Now, there are some coaches that would argue there are no schwas in English accents, but we can fight that out and discuss it later. But it just depends. Like me being from Texas, and especially East Texas, a lot of my people, there's not a lot of schwas, because any sound that comes up for us, we love to say it fully. Like my brother's name is Doug, and they're like, Doug. So there's no skimping on that sound, right? So it's just an unstressed sound that sort of pops up all over the place. Nice. I'm sure there's people I'm sure that's a very non-academic description, but
comments on this podcast there's going to be a war.
I know, yeah, and I'm going to be like, piss off. I'm just kidding.
Right on the top.
You're just in the comments.
Edit that out. Edit that out.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a linguist in Oxford that will rip me to shreds, yeah. And I'm like, have at.
I have a question. Is there a film or a movie that you wished you could have worked on from the past, or maybe one while you worked in the industry where you're like, man, I'll give a silly example, like Lord of the Rings with their the Elvish accents. Like, is there a movie out there that you're like, man, I wish I could have worked on that one?
What's funny is there's no films that I look at and be like, oh, accent wise. It's more just, oh, that film is beautiful, or yeah. That story is beautiful. I would have loved to have been on that. I think there's actors that you go, ooh, I'd really love the chance to work with them.
Yeah.
To coach them or just kind of witness what they do in person. But yeah, that's funny because I'm sitting here going, yeah. Oh, I remember, there was the film The Shape of Water. Mm-hmm. Sally Hawkins, lead actress.
I think so.
And she's English, and she's not speaking in that show. But the whole time I was like, this film is so beautiful. She doesn't speak, but I would just, help her with sign language, or I don't know. There's some people you're like, they're just so great that you would love the experience of it. But
yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've worked with Marvel a lot and I've enjoyed that. And I've been able to do so many different voices and accents and languages and what have you. But yeah, I'd love to work on more period films. So
period.
Who knows?
Nice.
Yeah. But when it's an actor you like, and also it's a job. I mean, this industry, for anyone that's in it, especially now, it can be quite difficult. So what are you going to be like? No, I'm only going to work on Jane Austen films from now on. Like, no.
Yeah. Is there an actor that or a performance that you saw where the accent was so spot on and then maybe you didn't realize that they were either that wasn't their like true accent, or they weren't really from there, that you saw in a movie? Was there anything like that?
So this is the bad part about my job, is that I can hear the little slip ups. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like the other day, I'm not even going to say what it was or who it was, but there was an actor who was doing an amazing job. And then I heard him say, I've been. He was playing an American instead of I've been or I've been. He was like, I've been here and I thought, I've been. The guy's English. So it's a bit of a bad thing sometimes, because I have to watch a movie, and then if there's anything that trips me up, I have to go back and rewatch.
So have you ever seen a performance or an actor who sort of just nailed an accent?
Yes. So this season of Reacher on Prime Video, there is an English actress named Sonia Cassidy, and she's playing someone from Boston. I could not tell she was English. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I'm watching a new show and there's an actor that I don't know, I'm immediately IMDb, just looking them up.
That's a good idea, actually.
It's ridiculous. And I've got my mother and my whole family doing it. So we always have to pause and then look everything up because someone will ask a question. But no, she was so good. I was wondering about the Boston because a lot of people from Boston that have that accent are usually kind of the older people. And so I was curious about it, but she was so consistent and so good. And I never would have guessed she's from England. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's really cool. You know, something that's interesting about what you said right now is that are some accents disappearing?
Yes. Well, like Cockney is a prime example.
Hmm.
I mean, I love Dick Van Dyke, but his Cockney was questionable. But yeah, Cockney, and he knows it. He owns it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
apologized for it. Yeah.
He fully owns it, but also he's so fun. You just excuse it because you love him.
Yeah.
But Cockney, I remember when I was living there, because I left England in 2009, and there was a neighbor of mine who ran a DVD shop. That'll date that era right there. And his wife was from Liverpool, and he was Cockney. It was not next to the Blockbuster. They didn't have Blockbuster. And he was Cockney, and she had a Scouse accent from Liverpool, and they would argue all the time. And he was so Cockney that I just would record them. And most of the conversation was them dropping F-bombs. But I finally got him to sit down and talk to me, and so I could record him, because that's literally an accent that it's a lot of the older generations. And with the advent of the internet, a lot of younger people, their accents are either imitating what they're hearing online, or it's at least maybe neutralizing their accents out a bit. So it's very rare. I think I said this phrase before, that someone sounds like they haven't left the village.
Yeah.
So when you do hear it, you're like, oh my gosh, can I buy you a coffee? Can you take 15 minutes and answer these questions? Because you never know when you'll get that again. Yeah. It's pretty rare.
What are these questions?
What are the questions?
Yeah. Is it like a set of them?
They're nothing scientific. It's more like, what's your name? Where are you from? Their age. And then I usually have them describe where they're from, because when most people, not all, but when they start talking about where they're from and their hometown, it kicks them back into their accent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like if you're on the phone with a family member, all of a sudden I'm super Texan again. So I do have questions that reinforce that. Where are you from? Tell me about your accent. Are there any phrases that you remember growing up that could you explain them? If you've got someone that's from like Philadelphia versus Pittsburgh, you'll say, what are the differences? And so, especially when they're comparing their accent to others they may get confused with, they'll dig in really hard and sound even more where they're from. So it's just something to, one, get them comfortable. The recording is more conversational. And then also you're getting a true accent, because a lot of people get nervous when you're recording them, and so you just want to put them at ease and let them know that you don't think their accent is crap. You love their accent, and so that's why I want the recording.
So cool.
That's really awesome. I've got a lot more questions, but we are out of time.
Crap, I'm sorry.
No, I wish we had longer.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's really
I can answer more, and I'll tell you to edit out 3 other things, so it's fine. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'll ask one more. Do you have a favorite dialect that you personally like like working with?
I'm going to give 2 answers. So I have a favorite dialect that I've never coached. So I love Glaswegian.
What is that?
Glasgow, Scotland.
Oh, interesting.
So that's like Billy Boyd, Lord of the Rings. Gerard Butler's from there. His accent's not as like tight Glaswegian as much anymore. But if you hear Billy Boyd talking, oh my gosh, yes. There's just something about that accent when someone starts speaking it, and I'm like, I just creepily stare at them. But as far as coaching, like I said, I've coached it feels like so many German and Russian and Italian accents lately. I really love Italian. It's just so fun. And not the like stereotypical movie over the top, Italian. But I was watching Equalizer 3 the other day again. because I love Denzel. And I was also jealous that I didn't get to coach on that film.
See, there's one.
It's more about Denzel and Italy. Put me in Italy working with Denzel. Done.
There you go. Yeah.
And actually, side note, I found out I had been on vacation in Italy while he was there filming that. I'm not bitter. It's fine.
Wow. And they didn't even tell you. I mean,
I know those
just
jerks.
The nerve of this.
But no, I quite enjoy English accents. I can't help it. And Irish, so fun. But there's so many others that I haven't even tried yet. I have never coached New Zealand, and I've just started diving into that. And so
that's a really hard one, right?
I mean, I've always been able to distinguish between South African, Australian, and New Zealand, and a lot of people mix those up. But I've been able. But I just thought, Courtney, just dive in. Just stop.
Yeah. What's that kid? I can't remember his name now, but he's been in a lot of things recently. But he's like a New Zealand actor. He's young too. He's like maybe like 20 or something. Anyways,
no, I'm like, what's he been in?
He was in The Wilder People, and then he was also in X-Men. I think it's like
was he in Deadpool too?
He was in Deadpool.
The one from Deadpool. It's the heavier set kid. Yeah, I forget his name.
I love him, and I don't know his name.
Yeah, I forget his name. Yeah.
All right,
he's got so much sass that just seeps out through the camera, and you're like, I love you.
Well, before we go, Chris has a very special question he asks.
Always.
So go ahead and ask.
Wow, that setup was great, Daichi.
Wow.
Yeah, you got it. You have a really question. Go ahead and ask it. Go ahead.
If you had one piece of advice to give anyone who is trying to get into being what you are, a dialect coach, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh, I mean, I would say start listening to and recording people. If you hear someone with an interesting voice or an interesting accent, and they obviously consent to it, to being recorded. And then, if you don't, not a lot of people have the money to go get training. You can train yourself, but like I was fortunate enough to be able to go and get a master's degree and train in it, and it was awesome. But it starts with curiosity about sounds and where people are from. And so much of how people sound is as a result of where they're from and their family and the environment. And so I would just say be curious about people and their sounds. And if you're really serious about wanting to go into this, start analyzing, like, how does this accent that I'm hearing sound different from mine, and note the differences. It just starts with those little things, because that's what you're going to have to teach actors, is the unique differences that distinguish their accent from the one they're learning. So I think I just would say from that perspective, just get really curious about, why does someone sound the way they do? Or if someone's doing a sound that you can't quite pinpoint, do a deep dive on that. It's just get really curious about it. And then I would say never do someone's accent to their face when you first meet them. I just want to say that. Like people that go to New York and start talking to the cops in a New York accent, and you're like,
Yeah.
86, 86. Just get curious about people's accents. And if it's something you want to really go into, you start doing the research and breaking down the sounds. And it's quite delightful. It's really nice to hear people and how voices are such a part of who we are. Yeah,
it's definitely true. Well, thanks so much, Courtney, for joining us on this podcast episode. I definitely learned a lot of really interesting things. And I'm sure our audience did too.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Seriously.
Yeah, I love it. It was really fun. All right. Well,
wait a second.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Before we go, sorry.
You win a brand new car.
Yeah.
You want to, exactly. For the people at home who want to connect with you, or is there a place that anybody can find you?
I mean, you can just email me. I'm one of those coaches who doesn't have a website. I know, it's just lazy, I guess. But I mean, obviously on TikTok under Accent Coach, I get a lot of people messaging me through there, or accentcoach@gmail.com.
Nice.
So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They can email me about the schwa discussion.
The schwa, yeah. Well,
Yes.
you'll get a few people in there. Just
Oh, I know.
all right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yes,
and,
thank you.
We'll see
Thank you
soon.
so much. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Thanks.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today's Lot1 Podcast episode. Thank you so much to our guest, Courtney Young. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Huge thanks to our producer, Mina Vazarian. You rock, dude! And shout out to today's sponsor, Tourist Hat Coffee Company. Make sure to check us out on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot1 Podcast. That is LOT, the number 1 podcast. And also check us out on lot1productions.com to see all the fun stuff we got going on. We have a few things going on, so you got to check it out. Film lingo of the day is 10-1. For those who need to know, it means that you're going to the bathroom. And 10-2 means that you may be in there for a while. Some folks even say 10-100 to mean going to the bathroom. But, you know, I guess it could mean that you're doing everything. But, you know.
I don't want to know what 10-100 means.
Exactly. No, nobody does. All right, guys. See you next week.
Bye.